Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains, and a Head-Banging Life. gbhblofficial for short, and we're doing a Let's Talk. And so let's talk about something that's really new as of the time recording. We're going to talk a little bit about Alan Wake 2. And I warn you now, we will be stepping into spoilers here. So if you haven't played the game or you haven't made it to the end, be warned, we're probably going to end up touching upon some of the themes, story, plot points, ending in particular, across this video. We do want to have a frank and open discussion about what we like about it, maybe some things we don't, issues here and there, but just the overall experience we've had. And reviews that were to a degree, but also just potentially different experiences, because you are seeing a wide array on the internet now. Some people absolutely love it. Some people don't like it. And of course, that's by the by. I can actually understand why some people may not like it. But I will just get this started by kind of throwing out the big words, which is, I think this is a masterpiece game. I think is the best example I've ever seen of a sequel hitting the 3 Bs. Now, I am a strong believer in no matter what format, a sequel must go bigger, better, bolder. It's all of those things. That has to be, because you've got to top what you did. But Remedy could have gotten away with basically making Alan Wake 2, which is copying a lot of the format of the original, the same style of gameplay, focusing more on action over horror and all of these things, and I think it would have been fine. I wouldn't have been unhappy with that. I enjoy Alan Wake's original game, but it didn't do that. It went bigger, bolder, and better in every sense of the word, from story to visuals to sound to everything about it. I enjoyed. Now, I did struggle initially to get into it, I will admit, because I was a bit like, okay, it feels slow. But then when I realized, no, actually, this is because it's telling me story. It's doing a story, and that's what it cares about more than any other aspect of the game. I want to tell you a story. That's where I was like, no, now I'm into it. Now I want to follow the story, to the point where sometimes I was given back control, and I was like, I want to play. I just want to watch. But that's my overarching view. Where does your overarching view sit?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar to what you have said. I mean, it's 13 years since the original Alan Wake. It was obviously going to be a big step up in lots of like the technological advancements. You know, I watched like a massive recap video before playing Alan Wake 2, because there's a lot of details in this story that are very complex and very
Yeah.
layered and stuff like that. A lot of the characters and whatnot, and lots of different names are thrown around in Alan Wake 2, and there's so many tie-ins to lots of different things. So I really wanted to properly understand exactly what the hell was going on as best as I possibly could, and that set me up really well for the story. And I do think it is an incredible sequel, because it, like you said, it does exactly what you want a sequel to do. It takes a lot of the elements from the original and it improves upon them in pretty much every single way. And I don't know. I was wondering like how much of Alan Wake 2 you followed before it released. Did you watch many of the trailers or any of like any videos? Did you know what to expect going in any way, or was it just completely like blank for you?
I watched two things: the original teaser that announced the
Hmm.
game was coming, and then the first trailer. But I chose not to watch any gameplay elements like that or any of that, because it was coming out when I was about to go on annual leave, and I was like, shit, I'm going to actually have the time to put into this. I'm going to be able to complete this. It's why I got a review out within a week of it fucking
Yeah.
releasing, which is rare for us, because I was able to actually put the time into it. And I probably, my first playthrough, my overall first playthrough was probably about 13, 14 hours long. So, like, do you know what I mean? There was a fair bit going on there in that fair. But I was in a more blessed position, because about 6 months before it released, they released Alan Wake Remastered. And I went and bought and replayed that. So it was really, really fresh. However, there was still a gap, which I think a lot of people forget, is that, and it really relates to the Mr. Scratch character. Is Mr. Scratch as a character isn't a big part of the original Alan Wake. The entity is, but the character, the name Mr. Scratch, that comes from Alan Wake's American Nightmare, which was the old Xbox arcade games on the Xbox
Yeah.
360. You know?
I know it's crazy. I still can't believe that we got basically a fully fledged Alan Wake 1.5 as like an arcade game back in the day. The arcade was crazy like that. But yeah, my feeling on the game as a whole is I think to call it a masterpiece to me is not like it's not an that's not it's too far in my opinion, to call it that, because I do think it's been so long since, it's really rare these days to get horror games of this level. A lot of people are comparing the atmosphere and stuff it creates to games like Silent Hill 2 and things like that, and I obviously that's a massive compliment, but
Yeah.
I do think it's not necessarily the fairest comparison. Silent Hill 2 is obviously quite an old game, but I do think it does feel like this is a horror game that will go on to be like referred to as like that nailed all these elements that like Silent Hill 2 did manage to as well, you know.
I'm willing to put this out there, and yeah, I think because as well, I think it's important to look at the second games in a certain series as the ones that vastly improved upon the original. You say Silent Hill 2, a much superior game than Silent Hill 1. Even though I've got a lot of nostalgia for Silent Hill 1, I think Silent Hill 2 is again a masterpiece. But do you know what else is a masterpiece? And it's the number 2, Resident Evil 2. And I think Alan Wake 2 sits alongside that as a game. Resident Evil 2 was bigger, bolder, better. It did all of that again. And it's iconic for that reason. That is Alan Wake 2. It sits amongst that. It's not saying it's better or on par because they're coming from very different directions and different eras. But that's how I feel so strongly about it. There was at the end of it, like I said in the review, I messaged you and said, what would you give Alan Wake 2? Just because I wanted to gauge your opinion of it. Now, obviously, my score was 9 out of 10, but listed as to reasons why, and there were technical issues that would be patched out later, and probably have been already, so might be completely gone and so on. But I based it off a first-time experience, and this is the shit I went through occasionally here and there. But still, none of it changes my view that this was, from beginning to end, an absolute joy to play, except it often wasn't joy because I hadn't played a game where I felt so tense so often, and that was so unique to me. I can't remember the last time I played a horror game where I generally didn't want to do certain things because of how it's done, because it is a traditionally old school survival horror game. You are not given a lot of ammo. You are not given enough at times to deal with it. I have run and hid in like more in this game than any other point in Alan Wake ever.
Yeah, I mean, the first few hours of the game are probably some of my favorite first couple of introductory hours for a game for quite some time. Just because, like you said, it nails the atmosphere, it nails that eerie feeling, the sound effects, and just everything about the environment. It's claustrophobic, and you just if everything builds to like a crescendo, and it's just like it's masterfully done. I do agree.
Right, so I'm going to throw questions at you then, and we're going to gauge some answers here based off our knowledge. Right, so obviously the game is played from 2 perspectives, although that isn't initially clear, and eventually you'll be able to swap between both characters. We're talking about Saga Anderson in the real world, so to speak, of Bright Falls, and Alan Wake in the dark place, and different styles of gameplay. So you can play them both at the same time, do 1 chapter of each potentially, or you could finish one up to a certain point and then go and play the other. I found myself sticking to Saga up until about 3/4 of the way through, and then I swapped the Wake and finished Wake up to the end, and then finished Saga in the end. But my question for you is this: they are both different ways of playing, and they offer different things. Which side did you enjoy more?
I mean, I do think they both offer like different areas to explore and whatnot. But I did like tend to enjoy Alan's segments a little bit more, just because it was basically cool to step back into the shoes of playing Alan, of course. And yeah, I just enjoyed exploring the like outside city areas and the changing of when Alan's investigating different scenes, the murder scenes, and being able to change the environments and stuff like that was really cool. Really enjoyed that. But I do think like I'm not really going to be able to criticize either section because I enjoyed flip flopping between the two. I do like one episode or chapter with one and then flip to the other and go back and forth all the time because I was enjoying both really a lot. So it wasn't like one I would say like stood out above the other one, if you know what I mean.
I think you've nailed it there, because I often enjoy the Saga parts more than anything else, because Saga gets a lot more a chance to explore, a little bit more free roam. I wouldn't call this an open world because it's not, but you certainly get to move around and travel around, and you can go to areas that you had been to previously. You'll want to, because there's a ton of collectibles and other things to unlock and stuff like that. But I often found myself drawn to Saga particularly more than anything else, because I often sometimes as well felt like her story was really developing the overarching narrative at first. Now, eventually it will obviously feel a bit more balanced, but that's how it felt at first. But basically, so for me, I enjoyed Saga's side more than anything else. There were certain areas of Saga's story that when I think about the game now that stand out, I absolutely adored. Probably the most creepiest part was the amusement park section, Coffee World, which had some brilliant moments for me personally. Just love the vibe of it and how cool and fun that was to explore and elements like that. But then I think of Alan Wake, and I do think of, God, I loved the subway sections. I loved uncovering these things. I loved how it involved Casey as well into it and so on. Something I didn't realize until about 3/4 through the game that still annoys me now, because I was like constantly, man, that guy looks familiar. Man, that guy looks familiar. Who is that guy? Motherfucker's Max Payne.
Well,
The original Max Payne.
It's Sam Lake himself,
of course,
the creator or the co-creator behind the game, and of Remedy, the main developer publisher of the game. So yeah, he's very much involved in it. But he's
completely forgotten that.
You can tell he's having a great time hamming it up and stuff in many of the scenes. And yeah, I think the performances of the actors, the motion capture and stuff like that, I think it's like stellar. And there's some really great moments. And I didn't, the actor behind Alan Wake, or at least the physical part of him, because I don't know if you're aware, but their
voice is done by another one,
someone else. Which at first when I saw like this, the lip syncing, I thought like was really like great. You almost can't tell at all, and the voice suits him so much and stuff like that. But like I thought the performance of the guy that plays him, I think he's from Finland maybe, or something.
Yeah, there's a ton of Scandinavian influences in this.
Oh, hell of a lot.
Well, you just brought it up, so let's ask that question then, before you go into that next thought, because it's going to be about the cast and about the voice acting, but also throw in, because Alan Wake 2 has more live action scenes and sections than we've ever seen before. All of that in one, the characters, the voice, and all of that. How on board was there anybody that was unconvincing, or did you just kind of vibe with everybody?
Yeah, I don't think anyone was unconvincing, and I thought it was a little bit surprising to see them like implement this sort of, because a big chunk of the game is like a live action, almost like a TV show in a way. Like I was kind of surprised after obviously they did Quantum Break, which is where they try to literally do half a game, half a TV show, and have it influence the game in different ways, and be based on your decisions and whatnot. So I thought it was quite surprising to see them basically bring that sort of element into Alan Wake, but I did think that it wasn't quite as heavy-handed as in Quantum Break. But
although it was amazing. It was amazing to see. I can't remember the actor's name. Plays the sheriff in it. Obviously, the star Quantum Break. Been in loads of films as well. Plays Lamplighter in The Boys.
Yeah. Did you? Oh, I can't remember what's his name. Oh, shit. I think his name is Sean Ashmore.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, do you know that he has an identical twin brother? This is a complete segue. He has an identical twin brother, and there's probably times where you thought it was him, but actually it's his brother. You've got to look up. It's crazy. When I found this out, I couldn't believe it. So I'm not even sure which
twin brother.
Identical. It's crazy. So I'm not even sure if like the guy that's in Alan Wake is the one that's from X-Men who plays Iceman, or the guy from The Boys, because they've both been in like different roles and things like that. It's crazy. But yeah.
Just a complete my God.
Yeah, I know. It's unbelievable, right? So I'm not... But yeah, it was really cool to see him pop up and have a little cameo.
That is insane. They literally...
Yeah, I can believe it.
That can't be real. That is the same person twice.
Yeah, there are probably times you've seen him and things, and you're thinking, "Oh, that's that guy," but actually, it's not him. It's his identical brother. I couldn't believe it.
Even here, I've got a picture. One of them has a shaved head, and it just looks like the same guy with a shaved head.
I know. I was blown away as well when I found that out. But yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, but it was really cool to see him turn up in it and have his little cameo.
I loved his moments. Whenever I came across him in the dark place, I was actually really happy to see him.
Yeah, it was almost like that safe room type feeling where you could hear his humming and you're like, oh, I want to go there and just like feel safe for a minute. It was quite nice. But yeah, there's just so many. Yeah.
Well, I want to stick to the characters thing, but I want to kind of ask, okay, because there are quite a few and they're all different variations. Outside of Saga, who I think is brilliant in this, I just want to say I absolutely thought she was such an inspired character that really, really added a new layer and element to the story. And outside of Saga and Alan, of the secondary characters, who stood out the most for you?
Well, I really liked the Mr. Door character. He created like a lot of intrigue. But another like thing that was interesting about that for me was I can't remember the name. I don't know why I can't off the top of my head think of the name of the actor, but he was also in Quantum Break, and he's a similar looking guy. He's also a black actor, and he died recently. He was in the.
Oh, you mean Yeah, you're talking
The
about
most recent
Lance Reddick.
Netflix Lance Reddick, yeah. So
Yeah,
I kind of felt a little bit bad because I kind of felt like maybe that would have been a role
a
that he
Lance
might have
Reddick
played if they
role.
had, yeah, because the actor seemed a little bit similar in his acting style and whatnot. So I kind of felt a little bit like saddened by that, but I really liked that character. I thought I was really intrigued by that, and obviously that leads to some of the more fun elements in the game where you go through the TV as Alan and you're in the TV show. And I just really like the acting of the guy that was playing Alan Wake during these segments. His like confusion and just like that whole back and forth thing, that whole like crazy TV show thing going on. And obviously it leads to one of my favorite segments in the game, which was the musical section, which like sums up the whole story of Alan Wake through
We're going to
musical and
save
song.
that. We're going to save that to a specific conversation,
Yeah,
but I want to stick
that's
to
okay.
characters. So yeah, it's interesting you say Lance Reddick because I can see that as well. But credit to David Harwood, who does
Of course, yeah. I
brilliant
mean,
as well.
I think he really nailed like just this mysterious character that has this like underlying like sinister vibe, and like clearly this person, this character, this being has some kind of like overarching power in this world, and it's like very intriguing. And yeah, I think he nailed this performance for sure.
I also then want to mention Ilmo and Ati, the
Oh,
brothers, in Saga side of the story.
yeah,
Truly spectacular. And I could not believe that by the end, I saw out their adverts. I wanted to see every single advert. Fucking brilliant. And I love how they tied into the overall story.
yeah. I mean, I love it that they were actually a part of the story as a whole, and I agree. I was kind of sad and there wasn't more of them because I just love their dynamic of in the advertisements. They'd have one that was like super enthusiastic, and then the other one is super like dry and just like unenthusiastic, and it just like worked so well. It was absolutely hilarious. I thought it was really good.
Continuing that, I want to also mention what the changes they made to Tor and Odin this time as
Mm,
round. Rather than making just Asian rockers, they really tied into their Scandinavian roots as well, which is a really clever touch. What they did with Rose, still
mm,
having that super Alan Wake fan, but being a little bit more unhinged in a more delightful way rather than
mm.
scary way. Clearly touched by the darkness as well. I ended up really liking her. Felt like she was a force for good in the story.
Yeah, definitely. She's got that eccentricity thing going on. I thought she was very like she's got like an endearing thing about her whole character that I really liked. Also, I was going to say I think they did the just some justice for the character of Alice in this story, of course, and because she's kind of like a bit part player in the first game, and obviously more about the victim, and they kind of like see a lot of. I really loved that they expanded upon her feelings and what happened with her, like after Alan Wake, and the whole thing about her seeing Alan's shadows and taking photos and that, and just yeah, I thought they did a really great job of like expanding upon her character in like a way that was kind of unexpected. I didn't really expect to see more of Alice and that whole thing, and it was really good, really well done.
100% agree with this as well. When in the dark place, I would get physically, mentally excited when I got to the point when I was returning back to the building because I was going to
Mm,
see what progression and the idea that Alice was being haunted by what was believed to be Mr. Scratch, but actually turns out to be Alan himself.
mm,
And he may have driven her. I already said spoilers at the start, but so there
yeah,
you go. That was your spoiler. Warning. And he may have driven her to suicide was one of the most shocking moments. And the fact that they put that on screen in the flashes of the camera was
mm,
like, whoa. But of course,
yeah.
at the
That
end, it
was
is, yeah,
super.
stunning.
The imagery of that whole scene is really powerfully done, and like just like
Stunning.
there's so many fascinating ideas in the game. You could break down them all. We could talk about every individual one, but I just I love the idea of being haunted by Alan and setting up the camera as he comes out of the elevator, and they all flash, and like then the images are on the wall and stuff like that. It's just so amazingly done for sure.
And of course, that will lead to, we'll get to, actually, we'll do the ending in a minute, right, we'll do the ending at the end, really. All right, talk about segments of the game then, because of course the game is split into chapters, stories, elements, all are like that and so on. Segments that really stood out, that were the most memorable moments for you. You've already kind of hinted at one. So yeah, the musical.
Musical. What can you say about the musical? I mean, it's just so like ludicrous, and so like ridiculous, but like just so it's just it just captures the like eccentricity and like of the whole thing so amazingly well, and just like just had me laughing the whole time.
Yeah. And the fact that it's catchy as well. That's the most thing.
Yeah,
The
I
song
mean,
itself is super catchy.
I couldn't get it out of my head for like ages after. Definitely one I'm going to go back to listen to. But I just, I just found myself standing there just watching it all the time. Didn't want to progress, just watching, the actor playing Alan and Odin and Tor and everything, just like doing the dances and just it's so what better, more hilarious way is there to like recap a story than the way they've done it? That I've never seen anything like it. I think it's going to go down as one of my favorite like moments in gaming history. I think it was that good.
It blew my mind, absolutely. Alongside that, I want to talk again, sticking with Alan Wake's side of things, but the entire hotel section. That there nails this really strong, old school, shining like horror environment with spectacular moments as well, but really testing and pushing you to switch between the different scenes and the different plot points that Alan has. I love that. I actually spent more time in there because I basically explored the most because I was constantly like, well, let me go here and change it to the scene of a murder, or go here
Yeah,
and change
yeah.
the scene of the cult and see what's different, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely explored every like inch of this game like fully, like in every environment as much as I possibly could because I just didn't want it to end. I just like I've said before, basically this is the kind of game where you're playing it, it's that good that you almost like just want to stop playing it because you don't want it to end. You want it to last as long as possible. And yeah, the hotel section is awesome, because I think what was quite surprising for me in Alan Wake 2 was that it went so heavy with the horror. Obviously the first game is scary, it's got horror elements with Taken and that kind of stuff, but I didn't expect Alan Wake 2 to really double down on that basically. And there's a lot of very gruesome moments with like blood and gore and stuff like that. And the hotel is like one of the places where it goes really like obviously it's focusing heavily on this cult, this murder cult, and these murders and solving all these murders and deaths and stuff like that in this creepy hotel. And yeah, just give me like it gives you like Resident Evil vibes and that Silent Hill, of course. And yeah, I did what you did, go back and forth with the scenes, change the scenes, and see how they would change. But and it like the tension and stuff in these moments is just like fantastic. And if you like enjoy that kind of thing, if you enjoy feeling scared, then I think the game does a great job. But the only criticism I would have if I was going to criticize it a little bit, because obviously nothing's perfect, and
Mm.
it's not a 10 out of 10. Like we said, is that I thought there are certain moments in the game, like in the hotel, where it does such an amazing job of building the game. I think Alan Wake 2 does building of atmosphere and building of moments and things to crescendo like terror like better than I think I've seen in possibly any game ever. But sometimes it doesn't necessarily go that next step, which is probably just like a personal preference of mine. Where I almost wanted it to go another step of like of fear, where I'm kind of like,
Mm.
because I'm such a horror fanatic and a bit desensitized, so like I want to see like more almost. But I know why they
Mm.
didn't, because I don't want to like have turn off people too much. Like in the hotel, for example, it all builds up to this moment where you've solved this murder scene, and then you finally find the murder scene of the lady in the bathtub and stuff like that. And I kind of feel like it was going to build to something big at that moment, and it kind of just like doesn't. And then you leave the hotel like straight after. But I felt there was certain moments in the game where maybe just one step further, but or maybe like a big boss fight or a big moment. Like I thought when you found her in the bathtub, it's going to lead to some like crazy boss fight, which is going to jump out of the bathtub and attack you or something like that. But it kind of doesn't lead to that, which is, was a little bit disappointing.
It's an interesting thing, and I think this is the cool thing about Alan Wake 2 is that everybody will find different things they maybe don't particularly like. I've seen a lot of people criticizing the mind place, for example, as being a little bit of an interruption of the game. I personally loved it. I loved stopping and putting everything together and trying to find the
Mm.
clues. I really did enjoy it. On the flip side, I didn't necessarily like Alan's part as much. It felt a bit unnecessary rather than just being a
Mm.
press of a button. I had to go into this writer's area where it was very limited to what you could do compared to Saga's
Yeah,
area.
I think because obviously Saga's whole thing is she is a an investigator. It made
Mm.
sense, but like maybe with Alan they could have done it a little bit differently. Um, Another small criticism is that having to like manually go to the map every time and stuff like that was a little bit annoying. It would have been nice if there was just like a button you could press to automatically go to the map. But I think my partner's currently playing it, Sally, and I think I realized that the reason they did that is because they make a point of saying that when you're in the mine place, you're not actually safe. You can still be
Yeah.
attacked.
Yeah, I
So I
got
think
hit
they made a point.
once.
so if you could like press a button and go straight to the map, then maybe it's kind of like to create that whole fear sense of like you have to go into the mind place to go to the map. It just makes you stay there for a little bit longer for that possibility of getting attacked while you're there. Um,
Ooh,
yeah,
do you not know you can go directly to the map?
you can.
Yep.
How do you do that?
Instead of pressing back,
Or do you
hold
stand in front of
back.
the map? Oh,
Nope.
if you hold back,
Hold
well,
back and it goes directly to the map.
I had no idea. I
There
didn't
you
know that.
go.
I was going straight to having to go to mind place every time I click on the map, or
Oh
I'd make
god, yeah,
sure
that would have been awful.
I was made sure Saga would like when I left her, she'd be standing in front of the map so I could click straight on it and that kind of thing. But yeah, talking of like you talked about Saga, like at first obviously I was a little bit concerned when I found out that basically Alan Wake's story would be taking the place from two different protagonists' perspective. But
Hmm.
I do think it ended up working out really well and how she was integrated in the story and how her part in the story and how it made sense how Alan Wake had literally like written her into the story. Like it was
He
done
did it,
so well.
yeah.
It was done so well. And I think like yeah, I just think like the time you play as both of them is divided up almost perfectly. I would say 50-50, and they both have such enjoyable sections. And yeah, I ended up really liking her character and how she played into the story and how she'll potentially play in the story going forward as well.
Before we get to that, then I got one more really, and it's sticking. I guess well, it's Saga's side because she's the one that deals with bosses more than anything else. There are a couple of boss battles in it. I
Mm.
will be honest, I didn't really love any of them. I often found myself quite confused. I died I died tons at
Mm.
the deputies because I couldn't quite work out what I was supposed to do there. The one
Uh,
that's
uh,
shooting you from, yeah, I struggled
yeah.
with them. But the one
Mm.
that I just didn't really like is, I can't remember her name, but the lady of the lamp, that one in the lower basement area. I just didn't like that. She kept spamming the same
Yeah,
move over and over again, and it started to feel very video gamey to me.
that's true. I agree that the boss fights are definitely a weaker aspect, and that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like there were moments where boss fights would have made more sense at times, and like I wanted them to happen more kind of thing, and they didn't really happen. And I kind of had, maybe in my mind like I thought of different ways they could go down, and they didn't really lead to that. And yeah, it's definitely a weaker aspect. And I do think even the final battle with Saga, where you are there with obviously Tor and Odin playing their big song and like a big cool moment against Mr. Scratch at the end. It's just a bit messy because you get so many enemies thrown at you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like I don't know. You mentioned how you were like struggling with ammo and stuff like that, but for me, I thought it was like a little bit too generous with like
At that end
resources.
point, in that particular fight, they got
Yeah,
super over generous with it. Super
obviously,
generous with
you
it.
can see why they had to because they're spraying so many enemies at you, and they couldn't have you run out, and then you were just. And it was definitely a challenge. Like the game, I would play it on normal, and it's a challenge, but I still found like resources very plentiful throughout it. I had like stockpiles of loads of stuff. But yeah,
The ending. So, of course, it should be no secret that Alan Wake 2, while it does have a complete story ending, as it were, has made sure to leave it all open for a
mm.
third game. What do you think of the ending?
I think the ending's possibly going to be one of the most divisive parts because it's obviously been 13 years since we've had to wait to get another Alan Wake game, and I think it's incredibly like ballsy to basically release a game that like many of us thought would never happen, because of like whether Alan Wake one didn't make enough money, or whether it's a lot of riding on Alan Wake 2's success to whether or not we will get a conclusion to this story. But at the same time, I really like admire the balls of doing it because like Remedy and Sam Lake and that they obviously have an idea of a story they want to tell, and they do not want to rush it or shorthand people that are fans and that have been following the story and want to see it played out in the right way. Yeah, so I think it's just like I said, you know, very brave to take that direction of basically giving us a game and where the story kind of like is still very stuck in the middle. It's not really ultimately a very progressive story. It kind of just leaves Alan a little bit stuck where he kind of already was. It doesn't really take
Mm.
him forward, except does actually muddy and complicate the waters even further than they already were. So, but it does set it up for obviously that final part, which I'm really eager to get, but I really hope I'm not waiting another 13 years to play it.
So I'm pretty confident we won't be on that front. I don't think we will. But while I understand divisiveness, I would say, God damn it, people, what the hell do you want? You have a story here that can be completed fully and doesn't leave you wanting more potentially. And what it does is does what you all fucking love your Marvel movies for, which is drip feed the idea that something future will come, that there is still more stories to be told and stuff like that. All the shit people go, oh, I can't wait to see the after credit scene at the end of whatever Marvel movie because it sets up another. Or we're going to get angry because this game, which is playing out like a movie, does exactly the fucking same. It did what Alan Wake 1 did, except what it did was, to me, was shock me. So I was so mad at myself for missing because certain things that I only realized thinking about afterwards. In the last or second last part of Alan's story, there's a point where you're moving towards the tower, Alice flashes in the screen, calling for Alan. I just dismissed it, as you would, because it's Alan, right? Now I know that's part of what she's doing. She's there. She's trying to find him. And that was a momentary almost connection there, whatever. Blown away by that. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Love the idea that the third game will probably put us in the shoes of Alice Wake for the first time.
I think that's very, very likely. Yeah.
But the balls you have to end it without letting us know if Saga's side is resolved was stunning. Because I thought what he was going to do is you're going to get the click of the answer and hear the girl's voice go, hello, mum, and then it cut. And it didn't. It cuts without you actually knowing. To me, that is horror level ballsiness. That is the end of goddamn Inception, which everybody praises. So
That's
why are we
very
looking
true.
at here?
I'm not sure. It's just because I think the amount of time we've waited, I can see it burning some people in the wrong way a little bit, just because like it's kind of like giving me the whole shit. It can give me sort of Shenmue vibes a little bit of like, what if like Alan Wake 2 does so poorly and like they just they don't get that they don't have the resources to like do it justice or do it properly and
I will
maybe
say
do it at all maybe.
my answer to that is Alan Wake 1 did so poorly that we had to wait a long time for this until they eventually got around to doing it. If in the end we have to wait a long time again because people just won't buy game or doesn't do well enough or whatever, so be it. I will still be extremely satisfied. We left Alan Wake 1 being told it's not a lake, it's an ocean.
Yeah.
And knowing he was trapped there and had to wait 13 years of it, I'm pretty sure I'm cool. And just having him end in a new word with a new line of it's not a loop, it's a spiral, makes it quite clear that if there is a third game in the future, it is an end of a trilogy because it says I'm getting closer to that end of the spiral. But I said to you, I think I said to you in a message, and I stand by this, I started to overthink this game and I started to think, and I need to replay it a second time. I'm not quite ready to do that yet. I'm not quite ready to do it again. But when I do, I'm going to be paying a lot more attention to other things. And one thing I noticed at the end, people, I don't know if this is just me or if more people are noticing as well, is whereas when Alan said at the end of Alan Wake 1, it's not a lake, it's an ocean, he said it in the Dark Places voice. When he says it's a spiral, he says it is an own voice, meaning that is what Alan, maybe,
Yeah,
and I do...
There's
I
definitely like
believe
so many subtle intricacy like things in the game.
Well, I do believe one thing that has 100% happened, which is you did get rid of Mr. Scratch. That part ended.
Yeah.
That side of thing ended.
Yeah,
But
I think
we
probably right.
didn't resolve. And I think if you'd have asked me to start predicting elements of number 3, right? Start predicting elements number 3. I don't think Saga will be part of number 3. I think she'll be mentioned and it'll be that everything was okay and fine and so on. I think it'll focus on Alice and Alan and them in the dark place, potentially different areas, different locations, and different imaginative stuff like that. But I think the character of Mr. Door, who was put into this clearly as something else,
Definitely
something different, will be potentially the major player. It's called Mr. Door for a reason, right? I think they know what they're doing.
There's yeah, I mean there's so everything is like every detail. That's why it's such a fascinating thing to dissect, Alan Wake, because it's just every little detail means something. You know, her name Saga, it means story. You know that, right? That's what her name
Of course.
translates to story. It's like there's so many fascinating little intricacies that it's delicious to dissect. But also, there's another one thing I wanted to mention to you because it's quite interesting. You haven't played the game Control, have you?
No, no.
Yeah, well, that's quite interesting because like even though even though I wouldn't say you have to play Control, there are certain elements in Alan Wake 2 that I was surprised to see how many tie-ins to Control there was. For one
I've
thing,
heard a lot about this, yeah.
the character of Artie, the janitor, he's a big part of Control, a major part of
Oh,
it. And obviously, there is in Control. It's mentioned in the game, the Federal Bureau of Control.
yeah.
That's like the what Control is about. The game, it's about this organization who investigates these AWEs, these otherworldly event type things that happen around the world. And Cauldron Lake and Alan Wake, that is one of those moments that this bureau investigates, and they investigate loads of other ones, other things around the world, and that's what they're doing. So, and there's a DLC also in Control called AWE that came out before Alan Wake 2, where the character who plays in Control, Jessie, she basically comes in contact with Alan, and Alan's communicating with her, and she's a big part of it. And I know that the next major game they're working on apparently is Control 2. And
So you
because
think
this is
this is a shared universe?
oh, well, it is. It is. It's not think. It really is 100% a shared universe. They're exactly set in the same universe in every single way. So I do think it is worth like playing Control just because there's certain little intricacy moments, little aspects that definitely tie into it. And I was quite surprised how many little elements there were. And I do think like the next big game is Control 2, and I think it's all going to end up in some way tying into some like big overarching story, basically.
Fascinating. I do need to play it. You have mentioned it before, and I've heard the things as well, but yeah, it's never come my way. It should also be noted as well, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there are 2 paid expansions planned.
Yeah, and I was wondering, like, maybe because we obviously had Alan Wake's American Nightmare before, they've had a history of like doing pretty significant expansions. Who knows? Maybe these two
Might be a
expansions could be the
wrap up.
conclusive chapters. I mean, it's possible.
Well,
Yeah.
the two they've got titles: Night Springs and Lake House.
Hmm. Well, it'll be interesting. I look forward to it. But yeah, Alan Wake 2 is just a game that I wanted to support, as much as possible, and I've been trying to support it everywhere I can by like commenting on Facebook, liking Facebook, share, trying to do everything I can to support it because it's just like there aren't enough single player like story driven games like this these days. You don't get enough of them, and it kind of like it sucks that people obviously are less likely to support them and like for it to do as well financially as other more popular casual games.
Best thing I played in recent times, and I've been playing the likes of Robocop and Terminator and stuff like that. So
Well, I went from playing Alan Wake 2 and now I've just been playing the Dead Space remake, and
oh wow.
yeah, so it's been a really fun horror time. But I've been blown away by that as well, actually.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it literally it's that Resident Evil original jump to Resident Evil remake quality jump.
yeah, it's unbelievable for
It
sure.
is unbelievable. That's our thoughts on Alan Wake 2. What do you reckon? Do you agree with us? Have you got more criticisms? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at gbhbl. Just search for gbhbl and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.